I'm Senior Vice President, Chief of Staff for Methodist Labona Healthcare, and I will do my best to act as the chair of this urban subcommittee. And let me welcome all of you. Really appreciate you taking your time for this very important endeavor, and we will try to be very, very respectful of your time. So with that, why don't we start by Dominic reading the statement, and then after that, we'll do a roll call and attendance.
Hello, everyone. I am Dominique Davis. I am the Director of District Implementation for CORE for the Department of Education, and I will serve as your facilitator throughout all of these meetings. I will be sending the calendar invites and the materials. The materials are going to change to a Google folder going forward. We have some issues getting the size of some of them to send through. So we're going to use a link to a Google folder going forward. And if you need anything, I will place my email in the chat, and you can reach out to me if you have not gotten a calendar invite or the materials when the meetings are coming up. So we'll start with the statement. The Tennessee Department of Education is excited to work with you on this opportunity to discuss the state's formula for funding public education. Before we begin, the department would like to remind you of the following. Conversations on this topic are not intended to reflect on the current BEP funding formula. The current BEP funding formula will remain in place until a new funding formula is recommended to and approved by the Tennessee General Assembly. The public is encouraged to submit comments in writing to ensure that all communications are thoroughly documented and can be reviewed and considered in the future. Public comment is encouraged to focus on developing a new funding formula rather than revising the current funding formula. Consider what should be funded in a new funding formula and at what level. Subcommittees will be responsible for reviewing public comment and making recommendations for what should be included in a new funding formula. While all committees, subcommittees, and members of the public should feel free to communicate openly, documents and records may be subject to public inspection pursuant to the Tennessee Public Records Act and may be publicly posted or otherwise made available. All recommendations that are submitted by the committees and subcommittees will be reviewed and considered, but not all recommendations will ultimately be included in the proposed new funding formula. So before I turn it back over to your chair, I want to quickly show you, and I can put this link in the chat as well to the website where you can find the recordings of these meetings. So this is on the department's website on the public. Sorry, let me let people in. So it's on the department's website. If you'll scroll down to the committee and click the little arrow next to your committee, you'll see all of the members. And then over here, you'll see information related to the meetings. And once the recording is posted, it'll be right here. So if you have to jump off early and need to watch, or just want to go back to one of the videos and see what was talked about, or if you know someone who wasn't able to make it, that's where we'll find them. They've already posted the meetings that took place yesterday, so these will be up pretty quickly, and I will notify your chair when it has been posted. I'm going to get back to the presentation, and I will turn it over to your chair.
Dominic, thank you for going through the statement. Are there any questions, concerns, anything that members would like to ask Dominic as it relates to the statement? Well, thank you so much. Go ahead. Thought I heard someone. Good. Well, now what we will do is, Dominic, we will go through and do roll call and attendance. Okay. Why don't we start? We will start with introductions, but why don't everyone go through and introduce themselves, give us the name of your organization and the community you represent, and one thing you are looking forward to and what you hope to contribute to the process in conversation. So why don't we start with whoever would like to start?
I'll go first. My name is Tyler Bolden, the Chief Executive Officer for Big Brothers Big Sisters of East Tennessee. I'm actually representing the other 4 Tennessee agencies of Big Brothers Big Sisters as well. Now, the one thing I'm looking forward to is a lot of our programming is reliant on reaching youth through community schools. And so I'm looking forward to exploring how we can be, how we can really secure those and formalize those partnerships with those schools and be an asset for youth within them. And then I'm hoping to kind of bring our perspective and the outcomes that our program has generated over the last 50 years here in Tennessee to the conversation.
Thank you, Tyler. Appreciate that. Next.
I'll go next. Ryan Hughes, Boys and Girls Clubs in Tennessee, Tennessee Alliance of Boys and Girls Clubs, 2 statewide entities. I'm the executive director representing 105 club sites from Bristol to Memphis. We serve just over 52,000 youth at 32 counties across the state. Really what I hope, one thing I'm looking forward to is hopefully, the different perspectives that each of the committee members bring. And hopefully I'll be able to add some value to those conversations as well. And then what I'm hoping to contribute through this process is to make sure that our underserved youth, particularly those who are economically disadvantaged, that there's equity there, that whatever plan we submit forward, it rises all ships at the same time.
All right, thank you. Okay, who would like to go next?
Good afternoon. My name's Ted Cornelius, and I work with the Tennessee State Alliance of YMCAs. I'm the executive director, and one thing I'm looking forward to is looking at this collaborative approach. It already feels that way, and as we all are looking to support our kids and families across the state, I always think there's a lot of power as we come together and bring our collective impact together. The other thing too, as far as what I hope to contribute to the process, I feel like we have really strong leadership team across the state who work in leadership with our YMCAs in partnership with the school districts, and feel like they have a lot of experiences already that I can pull from. And then also I'm looking forward to what I can learn from each of you.
Okay, thank you.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I'll go next. My name is Angela Whitelaw. I am with Shelby County Schools. I'm the Deputy Superintendent of all things dealing with our academic division, as well as schools and leadership. The one thing that I'm looking forward to, really hearing feedback, really listening to others across the state, and just really being a listening ear. What I hope to contribute when we think about students, when we think about children. I want to bring the voice, that particular voice to the table of how important it is with education, what so many students need, what we need in our school district and school districts that look like us. And so that's the voice I want to bring to the table.
Dr. Whitelaw, thank you.
Hello, everybody. I'm Jenny Lynn Utkov. I am with Methodist Le Bonheur Healthcare. I specifically am with the Community Outreach Division. I am certainly looking forward to participating with this group. We've got collaborations with Shelby County Schools through a pilot program, also school districts in West Tennessee, where we work with schools rurally and also in Tipton County. I am looking forward to really bringing forth to this group the link between health and education and the importance of that what I hope to contribute. Cato, I certainly hope to support you in this effort. And
that's number one. Yeah.
always, always. And we're so excited that you have stepped up to lead this group. But really, hope to, again, to reinforce the importance of the link between health and education and the need for more resources to be able to provide this important service.
And Lynn, thank you. Who wants to go next?
This is David Jordan, and I'm the president and CEO for Agape Child and Family Services in Memphis. We are a faith-based nonprofit. I think we're one of, if not the largest, two-generation poverty-fighting models in the state. It's a place-based model. We serve deeply in 3 communities in the Memphis area. So one thing that I'm looking forward to, a number of things. One is we are embedded in 17 schools, Dr. Whitelaw, with SCS, with Shelby County Schools, and ASD, and some charters. The schools that we work in are all underfunded and need more support and resources in those schools. So we see it every day. So I'm interested in seeing, looking forward to that conversation. And 62% of the matters that youth deal with, especially in under-resourced communities, are matters within the community themselves. And so whole family, whole child focus as it would impact academics and life matters in general. What I hope to contribute is we really listen to the voice, and we call voice and choice of the very people that we serve and participate alongside. And so bringing the voice of youth, bringing the voice of parents, bringing the voice of community leaders in the very neighborhoods that we are privileged to walk alongside. So I look forward to being able to contribute.
Thank you. Next.
Hi, this is Maureen O'Connor. I'm with Le Bonheur Children's Hospital, and I'm glad to be here today. One thing I'm looking forward to is working with all of you to really find better ways to fund our schools so that there's greater equity across our community for all of the children that are here in our community. What I think we can bring to the process from Le Bonheur is the fact that we see so many children that we care for here in our hospitals, in our clinics, and out in our community programs. And we see the great needs that there are for children in so many ways. I hope that we can bring that to the conversation and share some of those gaps so that we can come up with a better solution for kids.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Terrence Patterson. I'm the president and CEO of the Memphis Education Fund. I'm really excited to be with you all. I think the lens that I want to bring to the conversation is first and foremost as a parent of a student that is attending public school in Memphis, but then also as the leader of our organization. We are a philanthropic investment organization that focuses on improving K-12 education through effective advocacy policy, but then also innovative investments to improve our schools and work closely with our public school systems. And then also just coming with a fresh perspective, want to make sure that I am able to leverage the resources of our organization and our partner organizations to make sure that we are sharing all of the best practices, experiences that folks in the Memphis community are having, so that we can really, really work hard to improve the quality of our funding formula, primarily so that we can compete with other kids across the country and really across the world as we think about providing opportunities for our future.
Eris, thank you.
Okay, I'll go next. Hi, everyone. My name is Ramesh Akberry. I am a member of the Tennessee State Senate. I represent Senate District 29, which is in Memphis and Shelby County. I also serve as second vice chair of the Senate Education Committee. I'm looking forward to getting into some deep discussions. I mean, I've been told about how the BEP is a formula that no one understands and it's not fully funded, or it is fully funded. And, you know, I've heard this debate on both sides of the issue, and I really want us to settle on, or at least contribute towards a new formula being developed, and just being able to hear from everyone's perspective within their own roles at their organizations, I think will be a really good process. And I hope that my experience within the General Assembly will provide some good framework, and looking forward to being an active member of the committee. Thank you.
Senator, thank you.
Good afternoon. I'm Chris Henson. I'm Chief Financial Officer for Metro Nashville Public Schools. Glad to be on this subcommittee. One of the things I'm looking forward to mainly is hearing from all of the others, particularly what I call the non-school types, hearing regarding what is needed from your individual perspectives as it relates to providing a high quality education to all of our students. What I hope to contribute would be my background in school finance, as well as my years on the state's BEP Review Committee, realizing that we are not looking at the current BEP formula, but I hope that maybe some of that knowledge that I have can be something that can be useful for this subcommittee. Thank you.
Thank you. Next.
Hey, this is Cardell Oren. I'm with, hey Cato. I'm the Executive Director with Stand for Children Tennessee, located here in Memphis, Tennessee. Excited to be here with everybody. I am really looking forward to this whole conversation. We've been talking for years about the need for funding. We do a lot of, our organization's an advocacy, policy organizing organization in education and justice. So we do a lot of talking and advocacy work, especially locally, around additional funding for education and training around that, and always have to talk about how we're on the low end of the scale across states in terms of what we invest in education. So I'm looking forward to having a conversation that hopefully moves us up the ladder and engages more in how we do that in an equitable fashion to benefit all of our children across the state. And I hope to contribute that experience to this group, the experience of, like Terrence said, I'm a parent too, we have children in the same school, and the work that we've done across the community and engaging around school funding and advocacy, and what we've learned even with partners around the country on what's possible to be able to accomplish for children in the state. So thanks, I'm excited to be here.
Cordell, thank you. Next, have we left anyone out? Well, that seemed to be.
Hello.
Yes.
I'm sorry, I joined a few minutes late. Please
It's no problem.
My name is Candy Johnson, and I serve as the president and CEO of the Urban League of Greater Chattanooga. I work alongside our other affiliate CEOs across the state with the Urban League in the big four: Memphis, Knoxville, Middle Tennessee, and our overall mission is to ultimately enable African Americans, other minorities, and disadvantaged persons to secure economic self-reliance, parity, and power. And we serve 50,000 diverse, racially ethnic diverse Tennesseans across the state. And so for us, we wake up every day and think about racial equity and economic equity and educational equity. And so this is really aligned with our goal to better serve minority residents in Tennessee to have a better quality of life. And so what I hope to be able to do is truly understand from a parent and community stakeholder perspective how we can inform them about really what equity looks like in school funding, school and student funding, because those are differences, making sure that we have the right narrative as this committee is progressing, and to educate and empower parents to also be advocates for this work as we move forward, what this new model looks like. So thank you for allowing us to be a part of it, and look forward to working with all of you.
No, thank you for being with us. Anyone else? Well, thank all of you, and let me just add, one, I am very honored to be a part of you and to be with you, and I'll just add what I'm looking for from this group. When you live and have grown up in Memphis, Tennessee, and being a product of Shelby County Schools, at that time for me, Terrence and Corday, it was Memphis City Schools. That shows you how old I really am. I was telling someone the last week or so, I just finished a stint on my other free job, being the co-vice chair of the University of Memphis Board of Trustees. I was interviewing the candidates for president, and they asked me, what is it you would like to tell me about Memphis and Shelby County? I said, 30% of our citizens live below the poverty level. We're number one in the country with displaced youth, 16 to 23 without a job and not in school. Third of our kids read at a third grade level. Over 80% of our kids in Shelby County schools qualify for free and reduced lunch programs. Jenny Lynn talked about the combination of health and education. And those of us in healthcare, we've seen what living with the pandemic has done to our community, what it's done to education. So I look forward to working with all of you on all of these things. And I really appreciate you taking the time today. One other housekeeping matter we need to take care of. I will need a vice chair for days when I do another free job. Don't tell Methodists about that, that I can't make it. So do I have any nominations, or would anyone like to volunteer? Or do I need to draft someone?
Hey, Cato, this is Terrence Patterson. I'm happy to serve as your vice chair.
Terrence, I am honored that you will serve, and to pay you for your service, I will buy your lunch again.
Thank you.
Thank you, Terrence. I do appreciate that.
I second it.
Thank you. So Terrence is official now. As we look at the lens of this committee, the discussion, I want to make sure that all of you feel very comfortable with what the areas we're looking at. This committee is intended to focus on, we're focusing on urban. We're focusing on, as relates to urban students, we definitely with students with disability, economic disadvantaged students, but everything that comes with urban. We're looking at our goals and specific supports needed for students to be successful. The needs of all learners. Is it anything there that you see that you think we're missing as a group when you look at the lens of the discussion, that the things that we will be looking at?
Cato, does it call out, and maybe it's later on,
Okay.
does it call out, Angela Whitelaw, does it call out
Yeah.
our ELL students? Am I missing that? Because we call out students with disabilities. We call out our economically disadvantaged students. I'm just thinking, do we call out our English language learners? That was just my thought.
No, that's a great point.
I will say that there is a subcommittee that is focused on EL students,
Okay.
but obviously they are a part of urban districts, and so you all can add them in your discussion in any way you see fit.
Dominique, thank you. That was helpful. Dr. Whitelaw, thank you for bringing that up. Anything else that we're missing?
This is Candy Johnson, and I was just wondering, to that point about subgroups within the urban communities, do we specifically call out students of color? I know there is some reporting requirements under ESSA to already highlight that. So is this committee, understanding the makeup of most of the urban districts, are we calling that out?
Okay. Dominique, has that come up in any of the other groups that you have heard so far?
So this PowerPoint is being used with the same PowerPoint is being used with all of the subcommittees for this first meeting. That's why that language is there, talking about those specific subgroups. I do believe that when you get on down with one of the other slides in here, that as you all start planning and thinking that if that would be what you would determine, you need to gather information on and include. So that would be the decision of this subcommittee, and I think that there'll be some places for you to talk about it.
Thank you. That helps.
And I guess
anything else from the group?
Yeah, I guess that just relates to my other comment. I mean, I know our focus is on the urban subgroup, but in this example, it mentions suburban and rural communities. So it sounds like we may have just addressed it, Dominique, with your comment that this was a broad lens, but our lens will, of course, be very focused on the urban group.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay.
Anything else from the group?
Cato, this is George.
Yes, go ahead, Cordell.
The third bullet or point, the needs of all learners along with specific student groups based on the experiences and expertise of practitioners, and then it itemizes different practitioners. I'm wondering if we want to recognize parents, those in parental role, to give voice and feedback as well.
Okay.
And I'm going to put in the chat here in a minute the email address that the questions are going to. So if you have specific people and specific groups that are wanting to submit feedback in writing, you can urge them and encourage them to send it in to this email address as well.
So for clarity, the things that we're mentioning on this call, is that necessarily going to this group, or do we need to individually submit?
I believe that you all will have a place to determine how you're going to do that later in this discussion.
Later in discussion. Okay. Okay. What else from the committee? Dominique, thank you. I think we have some. Yes, go ahead.
I don't know if this is appropriate for now, but I think about urban districts and just to call out that might be related in terms of mobility of our students, and some of our students transitory, kind of moving between schools. And then I know that we focus a lot on trauma and, having a focus on trauma-informed practices. So, and then the third thing I would add in is I don't see anything here necessarily around equity. And I know quite a few people who spoke up mentioned equity. So might put that up for consideration.
Okay, thank you.
I agree, Cardell. I agree. I echo the same sentiment.
Okay. Thank you. Anything else before?
This is Ted from the YMCA. I just had a quick question about where it says the goals and specific supports needed for students. When we talk about supports, I may be interested in just understanding that better. Is that limited to what currently exists in the way of supports that we're going to be discussing, or could there be supports that maybe don't exist in the system that maybe we need to explore considering? I just want to make sure I show up in the best way for that topic. So
Dominique, correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think we're limited. I think we can add to it other supports. Okay. I think we can come up with other ideas. And I think that's the whole nature of this body. Dominique, is that correct?
That is correct, yes.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Okay, is there anything else? Okay. Well, if you have any other ideas, anything else you think of, shoot me a note, Dominique a note. We'll make sure that it is well vetted. Okay. All of you received the information after reviewing the introductory slides that was sent to you separately. Are there any particular questions about the process? Anything you think we need to take back? Anything we think we need to discuss with department? Anything, Dominique, and I need to look at? One of the things we're going to try to be very cognizant of is your time. We've already talked about how many meetings, but if there's a need for an additional meeting, we'll make sure we vet it among you. If we try to keep the meeting to a certain time limit, but is there anything else about the process you have a question about, or you want to think about it and shoot us some comments on it later? And along the same vein, any additional material or resources that you think will be helpful as a committee member, anything else you think you need, any material from Department of Education, any other resources that you feel you may need as a committee member. And also,
Cato,
yes, please.
no, I was just asking, and I know we talked about the Google Doc. So would all those resources, Dominique and Cato, be in the Google Doc, the doc that we will be housing all of our resources so that we can be better prepared for meetings, or will we always get an email? And I think you talked about that earlier, but I'm also thinking about any other resources that we may need.
Dominique, go ahead.
So I will be putting meeting material resources in that Google folder that will go into a calendar invite for each time that you're meeting. And I will put that in there ahead of time. If it's helpful, I can, go ahead and get those holds on your calendars. And then as I have the as the materials, we can put those in there. Other materials are going to be sent to you. I'm not sure if they're going to use the Google folder for that. More information will be coming, but you will be getting information, all of the feedback, the things that are being gathered from the town halls, the things that have already been sent in for feedback. They're going to be collecting all of that and getting it to you for your review. And there's a slide that we'll talk through a little bit of that in just a little bit later in the presentation. That answer your question?
Does that answer? Does that help?
It did.
Okay.
That is very helpful. Thank you.
No, thank you. Okay, additional information that you want or need to maximize you and your community's voice in this process. Think about that, and also if it's something you want to mention now or it's something you want to send us later, we can make sure we do that also.
I'd be curious to see data or information from other systems that have gone through this process and what those outcomes have, done for their systems.
Thank you, Tom. Okay. We have that down. Anything else that you can think about?
Yeah, this is Ted.
Okay.
One thing I was wondering is, I know we're getting a lot of feedback from the adult population. I was wondering, since this involves K through 12, are we going to be getting any feedback from actual students? And I don't have an idea of what age would be appropriate for that, but I think that might be of value to hear from the students and might give us another perspective.
I will add that in as a request to see if that's possible.
And we have that. We have that down. Okay, thank you. And if you think of anything else, I know, well, even though you've seen this, I know we're discussing it for the first time. Do not hesitate. Send to Dominique, send to me. We'll make sure that we look at it and get it to the appropriate source. Okay, you want us to move on? We can move on. Okay. Our guiding questions. What do you hope to be true for students in Tennessee, and what resources are needed to support the students or perspectives you represent? So give those thoughts. These are things that we will be discussing throughout this process. As we look to make recommendations, decisions will come up, but as we look to make recommendations. These are some of the guiding questions. Is it anything that we've missed? Anything, or do you have another guiding question you say, did anybody think about this? Or is this something we really should put as a third guiding question? Well, give that some thought, and if it is, let us know. We'll discuss that. We'll make sure we look at it, but we want to make sure we have the guiding questions that we discuss as we look at going through this process. Okay. Okay, we will move on to next meeting discussion. Here's how we're going to look at the preview. At our next meeting, we will receive the first batch of content for review. We'll try to make sure typically 1 week in advance, and if we can get it to you before then, we will certainly try for you to review the content in addition to feedback individual collected. If possible, also submit collected materials for the full group to consider. If you have things you want us to consider, things you want the group to discuss, we can make sure that we have that in front of you for our next meeting. And then our deliverables, in reviewing the material, members will need to characterize, and we've all gone through this before, the must-haves, the should-haves, the nice-to-have, and the others. So we'll make sure that we're looking at those 4 areas, and if there's other things you think about, do not be bashful to put those up there. And then the last thing, the guiding question over the next 2 weeks, how does our committee want to solicit or collect feedback to answer these questions? What is it we need to be doing? How do we want to solicit feedback? What are the various things? I know Ted mentioned about students. I know one of the things we haven't talked about is the business community. Talk about other communities. How do we make sure we're getting feedback from everyone who's impacted by how we educate in our community? Is there anything you can see that we missed in our next meeting discussion?
Sir, this is Candy again.
Yeah, Candy, go ahead.
I'm just wondering, are we gonna at some point have just kind of an overview so that, and maybe I missed it, but we're all starting from the same frame of reference of what the department has already envisioned? I know there's no solid plan for what this student-based budgeting funding formula could entail, because I know when we had our the tours that they've been doing here in Chattanooga, there was a lot of different apparent opinion and stakeholder opinion about this model, but I know that we're starting from somewhere. And I'm just wondering, like, where are we starting from as to how the department and the other state players are looking at this, what work has been done already to even come up with the idea before we dive into some of these other things.
Candace, I think that's an excellent suggestion. I would like to even add to that, what has been the track record in other states?
Yep.
As they have looked at this type of model, as they have gone through this, what does best practices look like? Dominic, maybe you and I can talk about that offline, and we can talk about having someone to come in and probably giving us an overview probably at our next meeting. I think that's an excellent suggestion. Dominic, what do you think?
Okay, and I can provide just a little bit of what has gone on as well. I'm going to stop sharing this and maybe. So you referenced the town halls. 6 of those town halls have already taken place. There are 2 more that will be taking place later this month. I can get those dates for you if you need, and I think they actually might be down here. Yes, so November 22nd and November 30th are the next 2. They're also doing some Twitter town halls. So that's another way to engage. And then I just wanted to make sure that you saw all of the committees and the different viewpoints that people will be taking, and we can pull back up that slide in a minute of the lens of the committee and, the things to focus on. And so you all have already talked about some of the things that, are possibly would already have their own subcommittee, but still very much impacts the urban districts. So, that just because there's English language learners or economically disadvantaged and highly mobile subcommittees that are focusing on that, that doesn't mean that there's, not some pieces that you would want to. But so basically the groundwork that has been laid is starting those town halls, making a platform where people can send in information, and you're going to get access to everything that's been received so that you can comb through that in relation to your focus for your committee on urban districts. And so each of these committees are going to be following the same process. And I think the things that you have already talked about, you want to make sure that you are clear to focus on. As you receive the feedback that's already been gathered, I think it'll be helpful for you to start forming what that's going to look like as you start categorizing all of that feedback that's been sent in, that's going to be sent to you. And I'll pull back up that lens slide as well, just to, now that you've kind of looked at all of the different subcommittees and that that you're going to get all of the feedback that's coming in. Is that helpful?
I think my question, maybe I didn't pose it correctly. What student-based budgeting means to me, from the standpoint of how the state allocates additional resources, may mean something different to another parent. I heard a parent at one of those town halls say, I feel like the parents should make decisions on how the funding is used for their children. If we need to go out and get additional tutoring services, or if we need to get something that maybe the school isn't provided, we need to be able to make that decision. I didn't take student-based budgeting as what that parent was saying. So what I'm trying to gather from the State Department, or whoever's had the vision to even move in this direction, what does this actually mean from where we're starting? Of course, it could end up being something else.
Right.
What's the mindset on that? Because I thought that it meant specifically along the lines of what Metro Schools has been doing for years. Well, I don't know how many years, but adding the poverty weighting and those sort of things. So that's where I think that I need more clarity so that I can effectively engage our community and also share that with my colleagues as they're doing their own community stakeholder.
Okay, and I will also, if you haven't had a chance, there was a PowerPoint that was sent to you all that you were sent this PowerPoint that we used today, but then there was also one that was titled Committee Chair Overview, but it was for the whole committee to really look at. And I think it'll go into some of those details, but then I will see if I can find someone who can also possibly join at the beginning of the next meeting to answer that question. But the definition of student-based funding that we're using here is that districts receive a base amount of funding per student, and then supplementary funding added to provide additional supports to students with higher needs or unique context, typically using weights or multipliers and or additional flat rates for more standardized costs. So it's taking that base amount and then building on what that looks like for each individual student's needs, and then looking at it, for the district. But if you haven't had a chance, I think that PowerPoint would be helpful. And it does talk about a little bit in that PowerPoint of other states who have done this. And I'm going to ask that question. The other group that had a meeting that I facilitated today has also asked for some data from other states who have done this.
Okay, that'll be good.
But then there's also a slide in that other PowerPoint that talks about some potential components of a student-based formula, and it talks about real specifically the base, the weights, the direct funding and outcomes. So, and some examples. So if you haven't had a chance, I think that would be helpful to look at.
Yeah, no, thank you for that reminder. I think it looks at the what, not necessarily the how in the end, but I think that's helpful. Thank you.
And Ken, we'll try to have someone also at the start of our next meeting to have some discussion with us. So, Dominique, thank you. Anything else that you would like to make sure that we bring before you or tackle before at the next meeting?
Yeah. Hey, Chairman, Ryan Hughes. Just to kind of build on what Candy was asking about. Are we going to kind of define reality around, what urban districts are defined as in Tennessee, what those kind of funding formulas look like today? I asked that question because, what Boys and Girls Clubs across the state we define as urban versus rural versus suburban, maybe slightly different than what the department defines as urban, suburban, or rural. And then, really knowing how does that funding track today, and what consequences this, body decisions make might impact positively or negatively those funds. It would be nice to be able to have that overview. And I apologize if I just overlooked that in the packet that was sent, but just curious if we were going to be able to do that.
So I'm trying to jot down your questions and needs so that I can get this.
Yeah, so I apologize. Just defining, kind of what the urban districts are and then breaking those down and how they're being funded today. You're talking about the baseline and then all of the additional supports so that we can kind of start at reality and then, from that start crafting. I just didn't know if we were going to have an overview like that at some point.
Okay, I will ask that question.
Okay. We will make sure, Ryan, we ask that question for you. We will follow up.
Thank you so much.
Sorry if this is kind of going backwards, but our job as a committee is to work together to define what some of those individual needs may be based on what we see in the areas we serve. And then are we going to be assigning values to those, or is that, like, how does that part work? So, Dominique.
So you all will, I think you will comb through and you will I think they have this structured with each of the meetings.
Okay.
To help you all think through and walk through the process and comb through the feedback. And then you all, as you go through this, will really start honing in on what are the must-haves.
Okay.
In relation to urban districts. What are the things that you should have? What would just really be nice to have, So he showed that slide a little bit ago. And so that's part of this process to help hone in on what you are going to be presenting at the end.
Yeah. By going through the must-haves and the should-haves, that will allow us to assign the value.
Yeah.
Because that becomes, if we say this is a must-have, that means the value is high.
Gotcha.
Really high. Okay, good.
It takes me a minute to catch on here. So
no, all of us. This is our first time, believe me, all of us.
And I'm just catching up as well, Chairman.
Believe me. There is no shame in our game today on this, because believe me, Dominique and I just got a chance to talk for the first time today. So believe me. Is it anything that we missed? Candace, Cordell, Ted?
Yeah, can I?
Yeah.
I would. David, were you going to say something? I don't want to jump in front of you.
Go ahead, Cordell.
I think this aligns with Ryan. It's listed at T. Ryan. It's Ryan. What Ryan was asking about in terms of baseline too. I think of if we're able to define what are urban districts, rural districts, what the difference is, what's some of the baseline data information. So we've talked about subsets of economically disadvantaged, SC or EL, ED, SPED. Like what are some of the statistics around that for the districts, and also I'd say in comparison between the urban districts and the rural districts, in addition to kind of broken down amongst the urban districts, which would give some insight, I think, to what might be the parameters in a student-based budget.
Okay. Cordell, you brought up something that I thought about early on when we first started talking about this. Think about if you're where we are in Memphis and Shelby County. You have an urban district that backs right up to a suburban district. And when you look at the economics of that, it's like night and day. And so I was just thinking, I know everybody else has the same thing. So I was thinking about even finding a way to have that discussion when we get into it. So we'll play around with that. Dominique and I will spend some time talking about what is it we need to make sure we also bringing back to you that we need to talk about. We need to talk through, even from the department standpoint. So I'm glad you brought that up. What else is it, guys, we're missing? I want to be respectful of your time, and we have 6 minutes, and I know Terrence and Cordell know me. They know I'm a stickler for time. I never go over. One thing you learn in healthcare, don't keep anybody in the waiting room too long. They won't come back. So
I'd be curious to see if we are able to pull the information that Cardell's talking about, how zoning also plays into that with our youth, because especially in kind of the rural parts of East Tennessee where I'm at, I think there's work to be done in just our zoning as it lies, because you've got kids attending. These zones are so big. There are barriers created just through that in many ways.
Okay, put that down.
Cato, this is a very basic question. Is the assumption that we're talking about the same amount of dollars currently for the BEP, or is the assumption there could be additional dollars? And so that would be one of my questions. So it connects to a lot of the resource questions coming up. And the other, I've listened to a 1 hour, hour and a half presentation by Dr. Christopher Candelaria at Vandy University, and this seems to be an area of expertise for him. And so I don't know if we're bringing any kind of experts in to speak. He talked about research having done in different states when they've gone through this kind of process, factors that impacted, areas where it seemed to have improvements, areas where it didn't help, some places where it hurt. And so I found him to be quite fascinating. It was a one-time kind of presentation for me to hear him.
Okay, good. I made notes of both of those. Thank you. Anything else for the good of the group today? You have all been very, very generous with your time, and you have been more than generous with me going through my first meeting doing this with all of you. We are most appreciative, and let us look at our next meeting is November 18th. Am I correct, Dominique, on that? November 18th at 2 o'clock? And we'll discuss our feedback.
Yes, that's correct. Sorry, I forgot I wasn't sharing my screen any longer, so I popped it up there for you to see. But
no problem. And in the meantime, the things that you brought up, Dominique and I will get a chance to talk about, and to make sure that we get back next time with those. And if there's anything else come up that we need to bring back, or anybody we need to bring in, we'll make sure we do that. Dominique, is there anything you want to add?
I'm just looking forward to supporting you all through this, and anything that that you think of in addition that you might need prior to the next meeting, just let me know. Thank you. And Terrence, once again, thanks for stepping up as the vice chair. All of you have a good rest of your week, and thank you for participating today. Good seeing you. Take care.